It's really nice of that guy to send me this wild feed footage, but there's nothing of any value on here. Well, there's another episode idea down the toilet. Oh well. You know what? I haven't checked my YouTube comments in a while. I can use a good laugh about now. And of course, the world's slowest, crappiest internet. YouTube. And let's see here. Oh goody, here we go again. Do video games, Ben. Why don't you do video games? You know, your ratings would probably be a lot better if you did video games. Why do you have that stupid 3DO pick in your intro if you won't do video games? Oh, great, this looks like a real winner. Why you know duvide gams? Why you know divide gams? Why you know do video games? Of course. You know what? You win. Alright? I'll do video games. And welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that listens to its viewers, often to its own detriment. Now, I've been getting asked almost since day one to do video game stuff here on the archive, and I have always said no, largely because I am not much of a gamer. Now, having said that, I do have a bit of a confession to make, and a very unsurprising one, I think. When I was growing up, I was kinda, sorta, barely a gamer. Over the course of my childhood, I had an NES and a Game Boy and a Sega Genesis, and I also played stuff from time to time on the family computer. And in later years, I picked up an Atari 2600 at a garage sale, and quite recently I picked up a Super Nintendo. So I've never gotten good at any of them, but they're there, at least. And I am doing this episode today because, to be perfectly honest, I've been going through one of those magic little periods again where just life in general has been getting in the way, and I've been having a hard time keeping up with the archive's release schedule, so it seemed like a good time just to take a little informal stroll down memory lane here. There's not going to be any history lesson in here, and there's probably not going to be any real great insight. You're just going to listen to somebody who doesn't know much about video games just kind of rattling off a bunch of stuff and showing what he has, so don't take that the wrong way. Anyway, I suppose we should get started, huh? Let me grab the camera. So, the whole impetus behind this video game thing was basically that it seems like every maybe 2 or 3 years I go through just a brief little spurt where I develop something of a new interest in video games again. And it lasts for maybe a week, and then I'm off it again, and I'm just back to doing what I always do. And so, what I've got up on screen here is basically just something for you to look at while I'm talking. But the whole impetus behind this thing was a few months ago. I was looking around Archive HQ for something for an episode I was working on, and in the process found my old Game Boy. And in fact, I, of course, held on to it, complete in its old little pouch and stuff. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that it was in still very, very good shape. It's, I didn't really play it a whole lot way back when. The stickers and everything are still pretty good and clean. And of course, I have all the stuff that what you're seeing on screen is one of my Game Boy games, and in here are the other 5 that I have. So a grand total of 6. I don't have a whole lot of them, never have, and probably never will. And I found all the accessories that I had, like the AC adapter, and I found my old cheapy Toys R Us magnifier, which is the only thing that seems to have any sort of damage. It's got a little crack here just below this gray barrel. I don't know if the camera is going to get that, but it still hooks up and still works when I stick some batteries in it. So, of course, upon finding this and not having not seen it in so long, I figured, of course, I'm going to have to play it a little. And so I plugged it into the wall with the AC adapter, of course, and I found that I remembered why I didn't play it a whole lot as a kid, and it was because I would start to get a headache after about 20 minutes. And I'm finding now that I get one after about 5, so that bodes well for me, doesn't it? And it got me thinking, didn't there used to be this thing where you could stick a Game Boy cartridge in and then you could play it on a Nintendo? And there was, and I went looking for it, and it turns out it was only for Super Nintendo, which I never owned growing up. It seems like back then you'd have every group of kids. You'd have the one kid that had the Sega Genesis and the one kid that had the Super Nintendo. And depending on whatever you wanted to play on a given day, you'd just go to the other person's house and play their system. And I was the kid with the Sega Genesis, not the Super Nintendo. And it just got into my head enough that I do want to try and play this again, or I did anyway. I think I've had my fill now, and so I went searching for a Super Nintendo, and I figured, oh, this stuff is old. This is thrift store stuff. Nobody really wants this stuff anymore. Little did I know. And so I went looking around. I wound up having to go on eBay to try and find one. We have a couple of vintage video game stores around here, but none of them had anything. They had something called a Retron or Retron, something like that. And I looked at it, and the price wasn't too bad, but it seemed so cheap. I mean, you just pick it up and you'd feel like you could drive your thumb through the side of it. And so I thought, you know what, I like having the original stuff anyway. I always have. I'll just go and find one. And a lot of stuff, I've had my very first Nintendo die on me many years ago, and when I went and tried to replace it, it cost me $15 at the video game store. And when my Sega Genesis died, my original Sega Genesis, it was just right at the end of them making it, and I was able to pick up a new one for something like $35 or $40 from Toys R Us. And so I figured it would be kind of the same thing. Oh, I'll pick one of these suckers up for maybe $20 or something, and I wound up paying, I think, $60 for this, and it doesn't work quite brilliantly. So let me pan down here. This is going to be one of those shows with kind of weird sound and weird camera here, and of course Archive HQ is always a total mess, so you'll probably see some other crap of mine in the background here. This is the console I have, and I think this is a fairly early one. It says 1991 on the bottom. But what I've noticed is, and what I've heard in kind of trying to fix this thing up, because this thing didn't work at all when I first got it. Yeah, I'm a real sucker. I started looking around, and I was noticing a lot of people were complaining about their consoles turning yellow. And I noticed that if I pan down a little more, if you look at the bottom half of it, in fact, maybe I'll have to take this out of the tripod here. If you go way down here, you'll see that it's yellow, but only on the bottom. So my conspiracy theory is what I got was somebody's old Frankenstein set that they had tried in some sort of goofy way to clean up and didn't really succeed, and just got another one just for parts, and for whatever reason, instead of trying to fully restore something, they just stuck a new top on top of the yellowed bottom. But whatever, it works. Like I said, when I first got this, it did not work at all. I took it apart. I actually had to get one of the. This has been a very expensive endeavor for me. I had to get a couple of the what are those called? Game bits, the little screwdrivers. And so I got one of those, and I got one for the regular NES too while I was at it. And I opened it up and I cleaned the system out as best as I could and did all I could with it. And so I've been able to get it to power up all the time. It works just great on that front. But as far as signal making it to the TV, there's something dodgy going on in there, and I fear it might be something in the motherboard, but I couldn't find anything. There's no leaky capacitors or anything. So let me tilt back up here and try and get a halfway decent shot. So let me show you how this thing works now. I'll turn it back off and I'll turn it back on, and it's not going to come back on. Nothing. But when I hit the reset button and I hit it just right, I can get it to come on. So there it is. Now let's see if I can get it to stick. Not quite. And there we are. After a quick little edit, we're back, and I was able to get it to stick. It took me probably about 30 seconds worth of trying, but I just didn't want to make you sit through. And so here we are. I found a Super Game Boy, as you saw, and I got it, and I actually found it in the original box. I just kind of lucked out on that front. And then when I got the console, it came with a game, and it's been kind of my sacrificial game, NBA Jam, which I have had for Sega. I may still have it. I'll need to go digging around for the Sega segment that I intend to do here. But I have been using this one as kind of my sacrificial one. This thing's been really alcoholed to death in just trying to clean out the 62 pin or whatever that is, 62, 72, something like that. And so I took care of that, and the game still works, but the reason this has been the sacrificial one is because it seems to be one I could replace pretty cheaply if I needed to. And I only have 2 other SNES games, and I just lucked out with that too. I was at a thrift store lately, and they had them, and they were actually still in their boxes. So I have Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario Kart. And I haven't been terribly impressed with Super Mario Kart. I'll probably piss a few people off saying that. Apparently it's considered a classic. Donkey Kong Country was okay. I've actually managed to beat a few levels on that one just in screwing around. But this has been kind of one of my little projects around the archive, just trying to get this thing back into fully working order. What I'd really like is to be able to have it work absolutely properly every time. But there you go. So here we are with my Sega Genesis setup, and I actually left the sound on just a little bit this time, largely because the soundtrack to the Game Boy Monopoly was really, really annoying. And as the screen says, this is Caesar's Palace. Hopefully the powers that be don't have any heartburn with me letting the demo screen play while I talk here. And this is on my Genesis, and as I mentioned earlier, my original one died on me, and I replaced it probably around 1997, and it was just as they were being discontinued, and I got it for something like $35 new at Toys R Us, not an open box or anything, just standard. And that was that, and this is the one I've had ever since. It works well. It does everything it's supposed to. I can hit the reset button, it works. I can turn it off and on, and it works, and it's great. And you can tell it's one of the later consoles, the design's a bit different here. So what I'm going to have to do is take the camera out of the tripod and head over there. So bear with me. So there you are. It's one of the later consoles. It doesn't have the ability to be expanded for some of the other stuff. I think there used to be a way to hook up a Sega CD or something like that to it. It doesn't have any of that stuff. It has no way of expansion. And it's a basic set. I don't know what I did with the original controllers. I really don't remember from the old one. But this one only came with one controller, and that's all I've got. Maybe I had more at another point, but for the life of me, I just really honestly do not remember. Now, as far as this console is concerned, it's kind of like my Game Boy in that I only have 6 games for it. You're seeing Caesar's Palace, and if you look at the label on the cartridge, bottom left of the screen, you can see the King Soopers label on it, which is a chain of grocery stores around here. And remember when grocery stores used to rent video games and movies and stuff? Yeah. So when they were closing out their games in 97 or 8, I think, I picked this one up for maybe $4 or $5 and got the box that it came in, and still has all the grocery store ephemera on it. And as far as my other games are concerned, you'll see just how exciting I am. It's Monopoly, again, just like on the Game Boy. And I do indeed have NBA Jam for this thing. I did not get rid of it. I still have it. I found it. And I have one of the later titles here, Family Feud. And I remember just laughing my butt off to Family Feud when I used to play it in the old days, because it's a talking game, but it was all made in Japan and kind of what you'd expect. But instead of hiring maybe an American or a Canadian or British or some sort of more American sounding voice actor, they had one of their engineers do it. So whenever you'd hit the number one answer, or this is from the incarnation of Family Feud where they had the bullseye round. So if you got the number one answer or something, you'd hear some Japanese guy go, "Number one answer!" And I would just die laughing. That I guess I'll have to try and play this again at some point, see if it still gets to me. And my other 2 games, you're going to be so shocked. Sonic the Hedgehog, the original, and the one that came with the system initially, Sonic 2. I don't know what I did with the box. I used to have it, used to have the case for it, don't know where it went. Who knows, but I used to play this a lot as a kid, and I never got very good at it. I never beat it, and let me just say this. I have beat very, 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 very few games in my life. Most of the games I've beaten were like Family Feud, that sort of thing, or maybe a puzzle game as opposed to an adventure game, or here Caesar's Palace where you win a hand of blackjack or something. That's about as much winning as I've ever done. Now, one last word here, as far as the divide between the Sega Genesis and the SNES goes, I think I still have to give the nod to the Sega Genesis, and not just because I had it as a kid and I played it a lot more, but just looking at it now, the graphics seem to be a lot clearer and a lot easier on the eyes, and it feels a little smoother, and the controller is a little more streamlined. It fits the hand a little nicer, and it's not like the Super Nintendo where I keep finding myself bumping into the buttons on the top of the controller and stuff. So I think I gotta give the Genesis the nod in that war. And so here we are with the console that I can honestly say I am as close to an expert as I'm ever going to get at. And when I say expert, I mean I suck the least at it. This is, of course, the original Nintendo, the NES, and this is the second one I've owned. I've mentioned this before. The original one I had and that I got as a little kid for Christmas in 1988 or 89 died in the mid 90s. And so I replaced it pretty cheaply and easily at the time. I think it was $15. And that was at the time where I think they had just been discontinued a year or two earlier and the value was kind of bottoming out. Now, having said that, actually, before I even get into that, this game you're seeing the demo screen of is a game called Cycross or Seacross, something like that. Seicross. And to be honest, I don't really care much for it. It's kind of a typical arcade ride and shoot sort of game, ride, shoot, and die. And I guess it's beyond my skill set. Who knows? And I got this from Blockbuster when they were closing out the NES games, and it must have been 1995 because that's what the sticker on the box says. I can assure you, and yeah, I've still got it. I've kind of held on to it, largely not because it's a great game, but because of the box. You don't really see this sort of thing anymore. Certainly not the NES variation of the Blockbuster box, but it's still got some stickers on it. It's got the date, and I assure you I did not pay $5.99 for it. I think I paid $3 or $4 for it. And that same day, I picked up some cleaning kits, some generic cleaning kits, which I'll still use, I suppose, to clean out the console, but probably do the games themselves another way, even if I need to. I haven't really needed to. Everything stayed in good shape. It doesn't live in a dusty place or anything, which is unusual for me. But I have two of them and picked them up for, I think, 99 cents a piece. Blockbuster was pretty much just giving them away by that point. And if I, finally getting back to where I was heading earlier, if I tilt down and show you the console itself, you might not see it in this lighting situation, but it's yellowing. Everything except the little hatch here has yellowed. And I'm not entirely sure why. It must just be a quirk of the plastic because it's lived in the shade all these years. It's never really been exposed to the sun. And I assure you it was not yellow when I got it back in 95, 96. So it's just one of those odd things. And it's another one of my consoles that has its little quirks. It's got kind of a thing where you can't just stick a cartridge in it and press play. You have to hit it just right. But I've done it so many times that I can do it pretty much in my sleep. When I put a cartridge in, I have to hit the ledge of the system just a little bit, and it works just great. So let me demo that real quick for you here. And there's the cartridge, if you're curious. And you hear it hit the edge. But it works just great. See if I can get a halfway decent shot going again here. And I have some accessories for this thing. Nothing special. I don't have Rob the Robot or anything like that. But I do have the original gun. And that is the original one that I've had all my life. And another one that I've had almost as long as the joystick. It's not an official Nintendo joystick, but I've had it all these years. I haven't tested it though. I suppose I should. I tested out the gun in preparing to do this, and it works just fine. And it's kind of as close to a thing as I have, and maybe the Atari would be a contender. But let's take a quick edit here and look at my amazing collection of games. And so here we are with my amazing NES game collection here, and it's actually, of course, one of my bigger ones. And unfortunately, I only have one game still in its original box. Jordan versus Bird, and you know it's an oldie when Michael Jordan still has hair. And I've played this a few times, never really got into it. I'm not a big sports person. I know it's kind of weird. I have NBA Jam and this, and I never got into either of them. I think I got this because it was cheap. I got it from some video store that went out of business a long time ago. Unfortunately, I only have one manual still, so spoiler, now you know one of the games in here. And then the one with $3.83 written on it is one I picked up at a thrift store several years ago. Tetris, which I played quite a bit of over the years. I used to play it on the Game Boy. Never got terribly good at it. And that's another real common one, World Class Track Meet. And I do have the Power Pad. I need to find that. So let me focus in here. So as you can see, my games tend to gravitate, my tastes tend to gravitate more towards game show adaptations and puzzle games. I never really got big into adventure games, and you're not going to find Zelda or anything in here, but I do have quite a few of these video or game show rather adaptations. So Wheel of Fortune and a couple of the Jeopardy games. Talking Super Jeopardy. And then, let's see, Anticipation, which if I remember, it's a puzzle game of some sort. And then, let me see if I can't straighten this out here. Remember that one? Maybe you remember this one. And then we go off into kind of mostly a bunch of not so good games. This is a paintball game. And there's that stupid Rainbow Company. I have a lot of these. I'm not that smart. Top Gun, another one that I don't think many people have ever beaten. I certainly haven't. And let's see, I'm such a sucker for movies that I had to get the tie-ins, certain movies anyway. So there's that stupid Rainbow Company again. And these games are terrible. And I'm not just saying that because the crowd does. They are terrible. They're unplayable. And so I only have 2 Mario Brothers games. This is the one with Duck Hunt also on the same cartridge. And then Super Mario 3, both of which I've played a lot of, or at least I used to way back when, and never beat. And to round things out, that stupid Rainbow Company again. Yeah, I'm not that bright, am I? Okay, so apologies right up front for the quality of this one, but I figured it would be just most practical to do a straight screen recording of this. And I'm using the built-in microphone on the computer. But the thing is, I was just recording audio onto Pro Tools with this for some of the other segments in this episode, and so the computer's running a bit hot right now, and the fans are just blaring away, so you're going to be stuck hearing that, unfortunately, but now you know what it is, at least. I wanted to take just a little look at the PC emulator that I've been using, and I've just started using it very, very recently. And it's called Boxer, and it might only be for Mac. Obviously, I'm on a Mac here. And I like this emulator because some of these other ones I've been experimenting with, you have to go in and you have to do every little thing, just MS-DOS style. Type in every little command. But with this, I can just double-click on it and get started. Now, before I even go that far, I guess I should note that I very rarely played PC games growing up. I only had just a very precious few of them. And I had the home game of $100,000 Pyramid on a big 5 1/4-inch floppy disk, no less. And some sort of learning how to type game with the Super Mario Brothers. And I had some game with Garfield the cat, where I think Garfield got sucked into the TV or something. And I had the original You Don't Know Jack. But the game that sticks out in my mind and that is near and dear to me is a pretty infamous one. It's from 1987, and it's an adult game. Let's just say that. And it's called Leisure Suit Larry. And I first played this game. I didn't even get a copy of it myself until years later after a reissue. But a friend of mine at the time, his dad had, I think it was an Apple IIe or something. And the game was a few years old by that point, anyways, if not several years old. And we found it, and we started playing it, and it blew our little 9-year-old minds. And I don't think his dad liked it real well when we found that, but it didn't stop us from sneaking in and playing it occasionally. So let's open it up here to get a little taste of how it looks, and the sound works just fine. So I'm going to keep it off because it's kind of obnoxious. But, oh, there goes Larry chasing his Inflato-Date. You're not supposed to use helium, Larry. Anyway, another thing you can do with this is you can adjust the CPU speed. I mean, 386 might be a little fast for this game, actually, but it seems to work. And I've experimented with a couple other little games that I found, Abandonware, and I do have to tweak it. So it suits its purpose, at least. Let's see if we can't get going here. And, of course, everything about this game is just one big joke. And, I'll be young today. I'll be 21. And it's very rare that I make it through on the first shot here. So, the Seahawks are a football team. Nixon was... somebody said a president at some point. Let's see here. Taxes should be... Some of these are kind of loaded questions, and this is where I tend to get thrown off. So let's just say eliminated and see what it gives us. Oh, it actually let me through. My favorite actor is Pia Zadora. I'll just say not listed here. Let's see if we can actually get this on the first shot. Oh, yes, we can. Tipping 15%. There we go. And everything about this seems to work pretty well. Of course, you do everything with arrow keys, and the drop-down menu you access with the escape button and the arrow keys. So, I should note this is the only game I've ever beaten, and that's one reason why it's so near and dear to me. I've never beaten any other adventure game, ever. This is it. And of course, with these old games, you have to type in every little thing, but there you go. Just a little taste of this. And so here we are with the last of my old consoles, and this is the Atari 2600. And I have mentioned this before. I got this at a garage sale a long time ago, and I paid the princely sum of $5 for it. And it had just about everything. It had the console and the controllers and a bunch of games and everything you would need except the RF modulator. And so I had to go down to Radio Shack and get one. And of course, the damn thing cost 3 times what I paid for the console. And the great irony is that over the years, it's been the RF modulator that's been dying. I have to hit it just right when I hook it into the TV. So it's been on my thrift store list for a long time, and I just haven't found one. But hopefully someday. I mean, I can still get to work, and the console itself works great. Everything within the console and the stuff that theoretically could not be replaced is just fine, thankfully. And a few years after I got this, a neighbor of ours was cleaning out his house, and he was going to throw out his old Atari 2600, and I asked if I could have it, and I got it. And so I got some more games and a lot of stuff still in its original box. And I got his console too, but for the life of me, I don't know where that console went. I have this sneaking suspicion that my parents threw it out when I was in high school. That would have been about right here. But anyway, I've chosen E.T. to stick in here just because I'm a bastard. The reputation that this game has, after playing this, I can say it deserves it. It's a very poor game. There's no logic to it. There's no spatial logic. There's not really any great rhyme or reason to what happens or what doesn't. The controls are horrible. And I mean, granted, I'm not much of a gamer, but normally when I play something a few times, I can make at least a little progress on it. I haven't made any with this thing. And indeed, when I first tried to play this particular game, I thought there was something wrong with one of my joysticks because I couldn't move it around. So I swapped it out. I have 3 joysticks, and they were all good. And I tried a different game, and it worked just fine. So it must be this particular game. So let me pan down here so we can take a look at the console. And there it is. I really don't know when this one dates to. My guess is probably 82 or so. And it's, as I've said, it's in great condition. It works flawlessly, and it's just the RF modulator that needs replaced at this point. So it does what it's supposed to. When I first got this, it was really dirty, actually, and I had to clean it out. And I've had to clean it out a few more times over the years just because the ridges, those seem to be dirt magnets. So I've had to get in there before, and I've tried to clean it with contact spray and stuff, but it might be getting to the point where I need to put in a moist Q-tip in there, maybe a little Windex to try and clean it back up. But it's great. Doesn't have any dings or anything. Don't know how good my camera work is here, but it's great. So let's pan back up. Try and get a halfway decent shot again. And I'll just do a quick little run through the controls here, and yeah. Works great. The color black and white switch does not work on this particular game, but it does work on the games that can handle such things. Game select works. Even if the cartridge itself's a bit clunky. Yeah, I just have to hold it down a little longer. Most of my games are a little more immediate. There's something up with this game, and I've tried to even use just a touch of contact spray on this game, so it is what it is, and when I hit the reset button, it gets started here. And I have one of my joysticks hooked up to it. I have 2 more. I have the 2 sets of paddle controllers, and I have pretty much everything that you would need for this console. So let's take a quick edit here and we'll start going through my collection of games. And this one's actually a little more impressive than my other collections. And so here we are with my Atari little storage unit. And what you're staring at is actually the lid of it. And I wanted to point out this little mascot in the center of it. See if I can't make the thing focus. I have no idea who or what that thing is, but it's there. And he is the mascot for the amazing generic video game center. So anyway, you can keep your console and stuff in here. I don't generally. But it's mostly just a place for your games and controllers and stuff. And you can see one of my joysticks here, and this is my worn out one. This is the one with the paint that's worn off of a lot of it, and I have another one elsewhere, but I didn't bother to get it out because it's the same thing. And I have a set of paddle controllers here, and is there any good way to wrap these damn things? So there's a set of paddles. I have another one, and the games themselves here, one thing about the system is the storage goes way down in here. So I'm going to try and get the camera to go deep down in there. Yeah, way deep in there you got Combat and Human Cannonball. So I'm not going to go through the games individually here, but this is most of the games that I have. I have a few more. And the thing about Atari games is you kind of know all you need to know just by the title. So there's a blackjack game in there, and bowling and golf, and really, what more is there to say about it? There are some famous ones in here. There's Space Invaders, and I have a copy of Donkey Kong deep down in here, and I actually have another one, and the infamous ET games in here. Pole Position is in here. So I do have some of the famous ones, and I have most of the original manuals for these. So they're not terribly helpful. I mean, most of these games are so self-explanatory that the manuals don't really mean much, but I do have some interesting stuff here. I've got this. It's more of a sales catalog, and I actually have another one here that actually says what it is. And this one actually has the address of who I bought it from, so I'm trying to blot it out with my thumb here. So it's nice having some of this stuff just for posterity. And I do have some accessories and stuff. Well, I shouldn't even say accessories. Like the neighbor I mentioned that I had that gave me his old Atari and stuff, he took really good care of his stuff. And he gave me his paddle controllers, still in the original box, totally complete. And some of the games he gave me were redundancies. So here's 4 games that I already have other copies of. And then he had a few games still in their original boxes. So I got Outlaw here, which I don't remember much about. Activision Ice Hockey, which is really, really hard. I never got too far with that one. Let's see here. I got football and dating things just slightly. Pele's Soccer. And also, it's kind of nice. These all still have their old price tags on them, so paid $6 at the time for it. So adjusted for inflation, I'm calling that 15-ish. But yeah, this is about as impressive as my video game collections get. And the arrows don't work. Oh, it's select. Okay. Sure. Why the hell not? Long jump. I don't want to do that. Okay. Oh, am I recording? Yeah? Okay. So I run. And I run, and I run, and I jump. Do I step back? No. Foul. Of course. So I'm running. I run and I gotta jump. Yes, yes. But I land on my butt. Of course. One more time. This is a lot harder than I remember it. Okay, I'm gonna give it to you this time. I'm gonna run like hell. And I go jump! Did I make it? I suck. Well, that's it for today's archive. Join us next time as we continue down that slippery slope of pseudo-nostalgia. And let's just try this. Just for the hell of it. So... Okay, here I come in my big condom, and... I don't know what that symbol is left. Okay. Down, yeah. You just touch something and you die. Now I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do. No direction on the joystick. Nothing. One more time. And bye-bye, TARDIS. So don't touch anything. I don't want to go left. I don't want the guy in the trench coat either. Oh, but I can walk through buildings. And... Ah! No, go away. Go. Did I just swallow him? Oh, there's another one. A lot of guys in trench coats. Okay. So it's just the same two screens. Wonderful. And get away from me. I can't shoot. There's nothing I can do. And... Oh, great. I touched something. I can walk through buildings, but I can't touch a tree. Typical. And I'm stuck again. Yeah, it was worth a shot.